For centuries, the British Empire stood as the largest and most influential empire the world had ever witnessed. It stretched across vast territories, spanning continents and ruling over millions of people. The phrase, "the sun never sets on the British Empire," symbolized its global dominance and reach. Yet, as with all great empires throughout history, the British Empire experienced its rise, and inevitably, its fall. This is the story of how one of history's most powerful empires saw its sun finally set. To understand the fall, we must first delve into the rise. The British Empire's origins can be traced back to a modest maritime power. Through a combination of exploration, trade, colonization, and conquest, Britain began expanding its influence beyond the British Isles. The 16th and 17th centuries marked the establishment of key trading posts, colonies in the Americas, and the beginnings of the East India Company's control over parts of India. As the Industrial Revolution took hold in the late 18th century, Britain's power surged. With an unrivaled navy, industrial innovations, and access to global resources, Britain cemented itself as the dominant world power by the 19th century. Its territories spanned India, Africa, the Americas, Asia, and the Pacific. The empire brought immense wealth to Britain, but often at great cost to its colonies. Economic exploitation, forced labor, and cultural suppression were the dark undercurrents of this golden age. The zenith of the empire was not without its challenges. Discontent in the colonies simmered beneath the surface. However, the early 20th century would mark the first significant cracks in Britain's imperial foundation. The First World War, which erupted in 1914, became a turning point. Britain, alongside its allies, emerged victorious, but at a staggering cost. The war left the British economy deeply in debt and strained its military resources. Millions of colonial subjects fought for Britain during the war, fueling expectations of greater autonomy as a reward for their sacrifices. Yet, these hopes were met with resistance from Britain, leading to growing frustrations and a rise in nationalist movements. The Second World War accelerated the decline of the British Empire, while Britain stood resilient against the Axis powers and emerged victorious once more. It came at an even greater cost. The war devastated Britain's economy, leaving it dependent on loans from the United States. Moreover, the post-war world saw the rise of two new superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, both of which overshadowed Britain's influence. The war had also emboldened colonies to push harder for independence. The empire was no longer the undisputed global power it had once been. One of the most significant blows to the British Empire came in 1947 with the independence of India, often referred to as the jewel in the crown. Leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru had spearheaded massive movements advocating for self-rule. Their efforts culminated in the partition of British India into two nations, India and Pakistan. This marked a turning point in the history of the British Empire. If Britain could lose India, the rest of its colonies appeared equally vulnerable. The floodgates had opened, and nationalist movements across Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean gained momentum. Figures such as Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya and Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana inspired millions to demand self-determination and an end to colonial rule. While colonial subjects were fighting for independence, Britain itself was grappling with economic challenges at home. The post-war reconstruction was a Herculean task. Rationing continued long after the war ended, and the British economy struggled to regain its pre-war strength. The empire that had once been the source of Britain's wealth now seemed more like a burden. Maintaining control over far-flung territories became increasingly unsustainable, both financially and politically. The Suez Crisis of 1956 underscored Britain's waning influence on the global stage. When Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal, a crucial trade route for British ships, Britain, alongside France and Israel, launched a military intervention. However, this move faced strong opposition from the United States and the United Nations. Under immense international pressure, Britain was forced to withdraw, marking a humiliating defeat. The crisis served as a stark reminder that Britain could no longer act unilaterally or maintain its empire through sheer force. The decolonization wave of the 1950s and 1960s further dismantled the British Empire, marking a seismic shift in global geopolitics. For centuries, Britain had ruled over vast territories with unparalleled power, but now the tide was turning. Ghana became the first African colony to achieve independence in 1957, setting a powerful precedent for the rest of the continent. The significance of Ghana's independence was monumental. It not only symbolized the crumbling of Britain's colonial hold, but also inspired a wave of nationalist movements across Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. Leaders such as Kwame Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta, and Julius Nyerere emerged as iconic figures, rallying their people towards self-determination. Over the next 2 decades, one colony after another broke free from British rule. Countries like Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, and Zambia gained independence in rapid succession. In the Caribbean, nations such as Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Barbados also charted their paths as sovereign states. The decolonization process, while largely peaceful in some regions, was marked by conflict and violence in others. Resistance to colonial rule often met brutal suppression. For instance, the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya during the 1950s highlighted the fierce determination of local populations to end British dominance, even at the cost of significant bloodshed. By the 1970s, the vast empire that had once ruled over a quarter of the world was reduced to the Commonwealth of Nations, a voluntary association of independent states. While the Commonwealth symbolized a shared history and offered a framework for cooperation, it was a far cry from the empire's former glory. What was once a hierarchical structure of control and dominance was now a loose association of equal members, each charting its independent course. This transformation reflected the broader reality of Britain's diminished global standing. Global pressure played a critical role in accelerating Britain's retreat from empire. The United Nations, established after World War II, actively championed the cause of decolonization. Its principles of self-determination and human rights resonated strongly in newly emerging nations. The United States and the Soviet Union, the two superpowers of the post-war era, also had a vested interest in dismantling colonial empires. While their motivations were often rooted in the Cold War rivalry, seeking allies in the developing world, their influence pressured Britain and other colonial powers to relinquish control. Within Britain itself, the winds of change were equally strong. The British public, weary of prolonged colonial conflicts, began to question the moral and financial cost of maintaining the empire. Events such as the Suez Crisis of 1956 further eroded Britain's confidence in its ability to act as a global hegemon. The crisis, sparked by Egypt's nationalization of the Suez Canal, ended in political humiliation for Britain and underscored its declining influence. Reliant on American support and subject to international scrutiny, Britain could no longer impose its will unilaterally. At home, economic realities also hastened the empire's decline. Post-war Britain was struggling to rebuild its economy, which had been severely weakened by 2 world wars. Rationing persisted for years after the end of World War II, and the country was heavily reliant on loans from the United States. The financial burden of maintaining an empire, with its vast administrative and military costs, became unsustainable. For many, the empire, once seen as a source of wealth and prestige, now seemed more like a liability. Though the British Empire has fallen, its legacy remains unmistakably evident in the modern world. The widespread use of the English language is one of the most significant and enduring impacts. English, now a global lingua franca, connects billions of people and facilitates international trade, diplomacy, and culture. Legal systems based on British common law and parliamentary governance structures are still in place in many former colonies, reflecting the institutional imprint of British rule. Culturally, the empire's influence can be seen in literature, art, and global geopolitics. The works of authors such as Rudyard Kipling, George Orwell, and Salman Rushdie grapple with themes of empire, colonialism, and identity, offering a window into its complex legacy. Meanwhile, the Commonwealth of Nations, though far removed from the imperial era, continues to foster ties between Britain and its former colonies, promoting cooperation on issues such as trade, education, and climate change. The fall of the British Empire was not the result of a single event, but a confluence of factors. Economic decline, the rise of nationalist movements, international pressure, and shifting global power dynamics all played crucial roles. The story of the British Empire's rise and fall offers profound lessons about the nature of power and the resilience of those who seek freedom. It is a testament to the impermanence of even the mightiest empires, a reminder that domination is never eternal and that change is an inevitable part of history. And so, the sun finally set on the British Empire. Its fall marked not only the end of an era, but also the beginning of a new chapter in world history. From the ashes of colonial domination arose a world of independent nations, each with its challenges and opportunities. While the empire's gone, its legacy, both positive and negative, continues to shape the modern world. The rise and fall of the British Empire remain a poignant reminder of the complexities of human history and the ever-shifting tides of power and influence.